I was lying in a hospital bed with tubes in my arm, fighting sepsis, and my boss was emailing her friends about how inconvenient my near-death experience was for her. She didn't know I had access to her inbox. She didn't know I could see everything, and she definitely didn't know that within a week of my return, she wouldn't have a job. If you've ever worked yourself to the point of exhaustion for someone who didn't deserve it, if you've ever been blamed for someone else's incompetence, and if you believe karma doesn't need to shout to be devastating, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in, because this one is sweet.
I've been a people pleaser my entire life. The kind of person who says no problem when it absolutely is a problem. The kind of employee who stays late without being asked. The kind of manager who takes responsibility even when something wasn't technically mine to own. For over 10 years, I worked in marketing, retail marketing, the kind where holidays aren't holidays, they're war zones. Black Friday isn't a shopping day, it's a battlefield. In Christmas season, that's the Super Bowl. I had had bosses before, good ones, average ones, even mildly incompetent ones. But then came Pamela. Pamela, not her real name, arrived like a corporate press release in human form. VP of Marketing and Sales, early 40s, polished smile, power heels, the kind of woman who entered a room like applause should follow. Rumor had it she was the fourth pick for the job. The board needed someone fast. Shareholders were getting restless, so they chose presentation over substance. And from the moment she walked in, I could tell something was off. She didn't ask questions about operations. She didn't sit in on planning meetings. She didn't dive into past reports. She scheduled a department party. That should have been my first clue. On paper, Pamela was VP. In practice, I was running the department. I managed website merchandising, store visuals, monthly sales materials, advertising coordination, budget allocation, vendor payments, project management, creative briefs, sales reporting, executive presentations. I even had access to her email so I could send things on her behalf, which really meant I was doing her job. She'd roll in around 10:15 a.m. every day, coffee in hand, sunglasses still perched on her head like she'd just left brunch in the Hamptons. "Big lunch today," she'd say casually. Business lunch. With friends who just so happened to run agencies she kept hiring. Agencies we couldn't afford. Every month, I built our departmental budget carefully. Calculated, tight, precise. And every month, she blew it. Event planners, new PR agencies, brand experience consultants, holiday gala deposits. When I gently say, "We don't have room for this in the current allocation," she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Just borrow from next month." Borrow from next month, which meant I'd start every month in the red. Then, at the end of each month, she'd sit beside me while I edited numbers, shift that line item, reduce projected spend here, make it look balanced. She didn't ask, she directed. Her handwriting filled the margins of printed spreadsheets, little numerical adjustments that magically made overspending disappear. At first, I justified it. Maybe she knew something I didn't. Maybe this was executive-level strategy. Maybe this was how the game was played. But something inside me twisted every time I hit save. I worked 12-hour days. I leave the office just in time to kiss my kid goodnight, then reopen my laptop at 9:30 p.m. Weekends weren't days off. They were quiet time to catch up. My husband started giving me that look, the one that says, "You're disappearing." But I told myself it was temporary. Holiday season was coming. If we survived that, things would settle down. I had no idea how wrong I was. Pamela's first major holiday season as VP should have been our strongest. Instead, it was chaos. She changed in-store visuals 3 times in 2 weeks. She scrapped planned promotions from our buying team because she had a better idea. She hired yet another agency. This one, run by a former colleague,
promising they'd turn everything around. Sales plummeted. Meetings grew tense. Executive emails became shorter. And for the first time, I saw fear in Pamela's eyes. Not responsibility, fear. Around that time, I'd been battling what I thought was a minor infection. I ignored it. Of course I did. Deadlines don't care about antibiotics. Until one morning, I woke up shaking, fever, dizziness, a strange pressure in my chest. By that afternoon, I was in the hospital. Sepsis. The word sounded distant when the doctor said it. Serious, life-threatening. Stress weakens the immune system, he explained gently. My husband squeezed my hand. You're done, he said firmly. You can't keep doing this. Lying there, hooked to IVs, I felt something crack inside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't answering emails. I wasn't fixing someone else's mistakes. I was forced to be still. And in that stillness, clarity started creeping in. Old habits die hard. 3 days into my hospital stay, I reached for my phone, just to check, just to make sure nothing was on fire. I logged into my work account, then hers. At the top of her inbox were subject lines that made my stomach twist. Not client emails, not sales updates, personal emails. I opened the first one, and there it was. Pamela complaining to her friend about how I couldn't just shake off sepsis and get back to work. My chest tightened. She'd sent me flowers. Upper management's card was attached, but she had organized it. Her favorite flowers, a performance of compassion, while privately resenting my existence. I kept scrolling. Another email. She was panicking. She couldn't find my spreadsheets. She couldn't locate project notes. She didn't know how to generate the reports. They were on the shared drive, clearly labeled, but she'd never bothered to learn where anything lived. Then I opened the longest thread, and that's when my blood ran cold. In this thread, she was emailing an old colleague asking for advice on how to bring in sales and save her job. He asked her directly, "Is someone managing the bulk of this?" She replied, "Yes, my manager handles most of it. Me." He responded with calculated clarity. "If sales don't recover, you need someone to blame." My hands started trembling. "She's in the hospital," Pamela wrote. He paused, then suggested something that made my heart pound in my ears. "You can't fire her outright right now. That would look like retaliation due to medical leave. But if you can prove misuse of company funds or misconduct, you'd have grounds." Misuse of company funds. My mind flashed to the edited budgets, the shifted line items, her handwritten changes. She was going to frame me. She was going to use the very spreadsheets she altered to paint me as incompetent or dishonest, while I was lying in a hospital bed fighting an infection that nearly killed me. I stared at the ceiling. For years I had covered for her, fixed her mistakes, shielded her from exposure, and this was her plan, to sacrifice me. Something in me hardened that night. Not rage, not panic, clarity. For the first time in my life, pleasing someone wasn't my priority. Protecting myself was. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The first day back in the office felt surreal. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The hum of printers too loud. Conversations stopped half a second too long when I walked past. I'd lost weight in the hospital. My skin still felt thin. My energy wasn't fully back, but something else had replaced it. Resolve. I sat at my desk and logged in. Everything was exactly where I left it, because I had built the system, not her. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Can you come to my office?" Her voice was syrupy sweet. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blouse, took one steady breath. Game on. Pamela's office always smelled like expensive candles and something citrusy. Her desk was spotless, except when she needed me to fix something. She stood when I walked in. "Oh my God, you look so much better. We were all so worried."
Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I nodded politely, sat down. She folded her hands on the desk. I've been thinking a lot while you were out. I'm concerned you've been taking on too much. Translation, I know you saw something. She continued. So I've decided to take something off your plate. Pause. The department budget. There it was. She was pulling control of the very thing she planned to weaponize. I'll handle it from now on, she said smoothly. You just focus on operations. Then her tone shifted, subtle but sharp. And when you drop invoices at accounting, you are not to discuss anything about the budget. If there are concerns, they come to me. There it is. Control the narrative, isolate the witness. Also, she added casually, if you're feeling overwhelmed again, you don't go to HR, you come directly to me. My pulse stayed steady. Of course, I replied, people-pleaser voice. But inside, I was ice. Back at my desk, I replayed everything. She was scared. Not sorry, not remorseful, scared. She thought I didn't know. She thought she was ahead of me. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake, underestimating the relationships I had built over the years, especially with Lois. Lois had been with the company longer than anyone in marketing. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. The kind of woman who could spot a discrepancy in a spreadsheet from across the room. But with me, she was warm, because I respected her. I never dumped last-minute chaos on her desk. I made sure documentation was clean. I explained context. I treated her like a partner, not a paper pusher. And more than once, she had told me, if you ever need anything, you come to me. I intended to. That afternoon, Pamela handed me a small stack of invoices. Take these down. Her tone was controlled, but her fingers tapped lightly against her desk. Nervous tell. I took the stack. Then I went back to my desk and opened my filing cabinet. I pulled out the hard copies of old budgets, the ones with her handwriting in the margins. Move $15K here. Reduce projected spend. Shift to Q4. I pulled the original digital budget for the current month, untouched, clean. Then I printed the email threads, every single one. Her complaints about me, her inability to find documents, her colleague's suggestion about framing me for misuse of funds. I reread that line 3 times. If you can prove misconduct, the audacity still made my stomach tighten. Finally, I printed the email where she subtly threatened my job during the first round of budget manipulation. If this is too difficult, perhaps someone else can handle the responsibility. It hadn't sounded like a threat then. Now, it glowed like one. I stacked everything neatly. Invoices on top, emails and annotated budgets beneath. A thick folder, heavy, not just with paper, with truth. The walk to accounting felt longer than usual. Every step echoed slightly against the tile floor. I wondered if she was watching from her office window, if she assumed I was just dropping invoices like a good little manager. I knocked gently on Lois's door. Come in. I stepped inside, placed the stack on her desk. She glanced down and her eyebrows lifted just slightly at the thickness. She opened her mouth to ask something about one of the invoices, and I cut her off, very clearly. Pamela is the only one in our department you're allowed to speak to about budgets or invoices. Silence. Lois looked at me, not confused, not surprised, just understanding. Her eyes flicked to the folder again, then back to me. She gave a single firm nod, understood, and then, almost motherly, she stood up, walked me gently toward the door, and shut it behind me. That door click, it sounded like a countdown starting. The next few days were strange. Pamela avoided eye contact. She stayed later than usual. Her door was closed more often. Executive meetings appeared on her calendar. Accounting meetings appeared on her calendar. I didn't ask questions. I didn't react. I simply did my job. Cleanly, efficiently, the way I always had. Inside, though, a slow burn of anticipation. Not revenge, justice. There's a difference. Revenge is emotional. Justice is documented.
On Wednesday afternoon, I saw Lois walking briskly toward the CEO's office, file in hand. The same file. My heartbeat stayed steady. An hour later, HR joined. Pamela's assistant looked pale. By Thursday morning, whispers had started. Something about financial inconsistencies, something about audit review. At 10:47 a.m., Pamela's door was closed again, but this time it wasn't by her choice. The CEO and HR were inside, voices raised, not screaming, but firm, measured, serious. At one point, the door opened slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her face, red, tight, cornered. For the first time since she started, she looked small. At 1:15 p.m., she walked out carrying a single leather tote. No assistant escort, no goodbye email, no farewell speech, just a rigid spine and eyes locked forward. She passed my desk. For half a second, her gaze flickered toward me. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I didn't look triumphant. I simply met her eyes, calm, unshaken, unavailable. She looked away first and kept walking. The elevator doors closed, and just like that, Pamela was gone. When the elevator doors closed behind Pamela, the office didn't erupt. No cheers, no applause, just silence. The kind of silence that follows something inevitable, like everyone knew it was coming but didn't know when. People slowly returned to their screens. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, but the energy had shifted. The air felt lighter, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without that tight pressure sitting behind my ribs. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach flip. The CEO. "Can you come up to my office?" I walked upstairs, not sure what to expect. When I stepped inside, HR was there too. Their expressions weren't angry, they were serious. And something else. Regret. The CEO gestured for me to sit. "We owe you an apology. Not corporate speak, not vague, direct." He explained that accounting had uncovered significant discrepancies in the budget, months of manipulated numbers, annotated spreadsheets, handwritten changes, documentation showing directives that didn't match official reports, and then there were the emails. He didn't repeat them word for word. He didn't have to. HR leaned forward slightly. "We are very sorry you experienced that, especially while on medical leave." There was a pause, and for a second my throat tightened, because here's the thing about people pleasers. We get so used to being blamed that when someone actually acknowledges our innocence, it hits differently. I nodded slowly. "Thank you." They told me I would receive a paid week off to take whenever I wanted. No conditions, no expectations, just rest, real rest. As I left the office, I felt something unfamiliar. Validation. Not loud, not dramatic, but solid, like a foundation being rebuilt. I stayed with the company another year. Things stabilized. The department functioned better because it always had been functioning. It just needed leadership that didn't sabotage it. But something inside me had changed. I stopped volunteering for everything. I stopped covering for incompetence. I started documenting everything. And slowly, I stopped apologizing for existing. Eventually, I left for a healthier opportunity, better culture, better leadership, and a boss who actually trusted me. His name was Mike, and he was the complete opposite of Pamela. Where she deflected blame, he accepted responsibility. Where she micromanaged optics, he focused on results. Where she saw employees as shields, he saw them as partners. Working under him reminded me what normal felt like. 5 years passed. My career progressed. I was managing sales and marketing again, but this time with autonomy, respect, authority. We were hiring to build out my team, and one afternoon, I sat at my desk reviewing applications. Resume after resume blurred together, metrics, buzzwords, inflated achievements, until my cursor stopped. There it was,
Her name. I blinked. Maybe it was a coincidence, common name, but something in my chest tightened. I clicked, and there she was, Pamela. Her resume was polished, confident, and very carefully rewritten. Her highest title? VP at our old company. After that, a series of lateral moves, then smaller titles, then shorter tenures, job hopping, over and over. And then I saw it. Led company to 87% sales growth during holiday season. I leaned back slowly. 87%. The same holiday season where sales tanked. The same season where she panicked. The same season where she tried to frame me. She had taken the work I managed, the salvage operations we pulled off after her chaos, and rewritten it as her triumph. It was almost impressive if it weren't so shameless. There's something surreal about holding someone's future in your cursor. I stared at her resume longer than I needed to. 1,000 small memories flickered. The hospital bed, the emails, the subtle threats, the flower bouquet, her walking past my desk with that rigid spine. And then another thought surfaced. I am not the same person anymore. 5 years ago, I would have considered giving her a chance. I would have thought, maybe she's changed. Maybe people deserve grace. But growth doesn't mean forgetting, and forgiveness doesn't require access. My job now wasn't to heal old wounds. It was to protect my team. And I knew, with absolute clarity, she would never walk into another department of mine. I moved the cursor, hovered over the button, disqualified, click. No dramatic music, no fireworks, just a quiet, final decision. And the strangest thing happened. I smiled, not out of cruelty, out of closure.
Revenge stories often end with shouting, with humiliation, with public exposure. Mine ended with silence. The most powerful thing I did wasn't exposing her. It wasn't confronting her. It wasn't sending a scathing email. It was denying her access. Access to my team. Access to my environment. Access to the safety I built. Because here's the truth. The opposite of powerlessness isn't revenge. It's boundaries. And 5 years ago, I had none. Now, I had complete control over who entered my professional world. She gambled with my livelihood. She tried to make me the scapegoat. And years later, without even knowing it, she ran into the one person who remembered. I'll be honest, for a brief moment, I considered writing a personal rejection email, something polite, professional, but unmistakably clear that I knew. Something like, "Thank you for your application. We've decided to move forward with candidates whose documented achievements align with company records." But I didn't, because closure doesn't need an audience, and I didn't need her to know. I already did. When I think back to that hospital bed, to the IV drip, to the trembling hands scrolling through her emails, I barely recognize that version of myself. She thought working harder would earn loyalty. She thought sacrifice guaranteed protection. She thought being indispensable meant being safe. She was wrong. Indispensable employees are often the easiest to exploit until they stop volunteering for the role. Pamela didn't fall because I attacked her. She fell because she underestimated the paper trail, because she believed fear was stronger than documentation, because she assumed I'd stay quiet. And 5 years later, she discovered something else. People pleasers can grow teeth. Sometimes karma isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet click. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's simply refusing to let someone back into the room. And honestly, that's enough. If this story hit home, if you've ever been blamed for someone else's failure, if you've ever watched someone powerful underestimate you, hit that like button, subscribe for more real, satisfying revenge stories, and tell me in the comments, would you have interviewed her just to see her reaction? Or was the silent disqualified the perfect ending? Until next time, remember, document everything and never underestimate the quiet ones.